Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Hindustan Times, and my name is Aisha Varma. Let's begin with a few quotes to give you a hint about our next session. The earth has music for those who listen. Words by William Shakespeare. In order to see birds, it is necessary to become a part of the silence. Words by Robert Lind. And if birds can glide for long periods of time, then why can't I? These are words by the famous Orville Wright. Joining us is a special guest, Ms. Komal Agarwal, a senior UX designer at Salesforce. Previously, she led Design at PayPal, where she worked on crafting fintech experiences that felt intuitive, human, and a little less finicky. With over a decade of experience in UX and product design, she has built high impact products across countries, blending here
Uh,
and citizen scientist, equally at home with a pair of binoculars as she is inside of a Figma file. She draws inspiration not only from user journeys, but from bird migrations, where patience, observation, and timing matter as much as they do in good design. Komal, how exactly has bird watching made you a better designer? Tell us more about what it's like to be a bird watcher and what parallels you'd like to draw with your profession.
Thank you, Aisha. Well, for that, we'll have to actually get into the presentation.
Let's take a look.
Okay. Hi, welcome everyone. Uh, Great to be talking about this. It's quite a running joke between me and my friends that you'll have to pay me to stop talking about birds. So, well, here I am talking about birds again. Anyway, let's begin. So, I'm Komal, and if it were not evident by now, I like birds. But amongst the many things I like, birds and design are on the top. Design also because it's been my profession for the last 10-ish years. I currently work as a senior experience designer with Salesforce. It's one of the many, many tech companies you will find in Bangalore. Anyway, uh, with this, the originally this talk was developed in for Design Days, which is an annual design conference by Salesforce, and I am repurposing the same talk here for our today's session. Okay, let's begin. Okay, so what's bird watching? So most people think that bird watching is just standing around with binoculars, staring at trees, pretending to see something that others can't find. Well, most of the times bird watching is that, but at other times you do find things interesting, which are birds. I started bird watching thinking that it would be, very calm weekend hobby. I will get a break from my screens and also college assignments. But suddenly I was waking up at 5 a.m., getting bitten by mosquitoes, and everything happening all by choice. So, yeah, it has just spiraled out of control very, very quickly. The more time I spent designing, the more I have been realizing that, oh, this is what bird watching is also about. So, both of these things need a lot of patience, lot of observations, lot of curiosity. Also, weird obsessions with details, which you will see in the following slides. Anyway, so today I want to take you all through a few lessons of how bird watching for me has been and how it has helped me in my professional career as well. Let's start. Well, the first parallel I will draw is between patience and observation. Well, everyone knows that bird watching is basically like a masterclass in patience. You wake up early, full of hope, you set up your binoculars, and then nothing happens for hours until something does. So, with that, I will give you one example. This is an image of one of my bird watching sessions. This is in particular in Pak Thale, which is a very tiny town in Thailand. I was out there particularly looking for one single species. Do you all want to take a guess on how long it took me to find that species? I think access is via comments. So, okay. To give you all a hint, I will say, okay. So the total distance I covered was 2.36 kilometers. And now, if you all want to take a guess how long did it take me to find that one particular bird. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I don't think I can read any comments if there are any comments. So, uh, okay, going ahead. So, in my search, before I come to how long it actually took me, there were 51 species overall, and I went through 11,000 different individual birds trying to find that one particular species. By the fifth hour or by the sixth hour, I was extremely sunburned, tropical weather. I was hungry, and I was questioning my life choices, whether I even want to do this. But by the end of seventh hour, I actually found the bird that I was looking for, which is this bird. It's called a spoon-billed sandpiper, and it only took me 7 hours and 43 minutes to find it from the time I started looking for the bird. So yeah, it's like 10 seconds of joy for 8 hours of search. So that definitely teaches you and humbles you with a lot of patience in life. This is a better picture of the bird. This is not my picture. Again, this is a critically endangered bird, extremely cracker of the bird. You don't see it anywhere else except for one or two pockets that you can find along the coast. But yeah, so it did teach me a lot that day and in general daily life as well. Similarly, when it comes to design, we often build a lot of products, but the time it comes from an idea to actually the product launch, it can take months and years. There's a constant cycle of testing, getting feedback, working on multiple iterations of the same thing over long periods, and then you finally see your idea come to life. So that's the story of patience. Attention to detail. And while patience teaches us to look longer, attention to detail teaches us to look closer and to really observe the details here. Once you start birdings, you will find that there are things you can't unsee or you can't unhear. You will start noticing ridiculous amount of detail, like the exact shade of blue that one species carries. For example, these are 8 different species, and I can assure you, I've double, triple checked. These are 8 different species of Siamese flycatchers, or also known as blue flycatchers. So, all of these are the species here. Now, in bird watching, this is the kind of details you look at, and it's not very different from what happens in design. Because once you start noticing details when it comes to design, you will find that, oh, there's an icon which is misaligned, there are some inconsistent paddings, there are some headlines which are just too bold and should not be, and it bothers you, and your brain will just refuse to let it go. So now, like we saw shades of blue in birds, there are also different shades of blues in all of these buttons. And I can tell you, as a designer, I've been using these buttons for over a year now in my current company. But there's only one button which is actually the right shade of blue. So, yeah, bird watching comes in very handy in distinguishing things like these. This is the exact shade of blue that Salesforce uses. So, yeah, once you learn to see these details, whether it is in feathers or in pixels, you just can't stop. Now, the next parallel is understanding behavior. I will directly leave this with an example. Okay, so this particular bird right here was a gray headed canary flycatcher. The behavior I really would like to point out here is that y'all noticed how the bird always comes back to the same perch. It comes back to the same branch. It will go fly off, do something, and come back to the same branch. Not all birds do this. Only very, very specific species of birds do this. Now, the photographer, in this case, Drew Frilton, knew this about this particular species. So he knew when the bird flies off to continue recording, because he knows that because this bird has this particular behavior, it will come back to the same perch. And now, by understanding this bird behavior, it has led to a better outcome in this case, which is a better quality video. Now, in design, same thing happens. You just have to like slow down enough to really watch your users, because I work on the intersection of user experience. I will often conduct usability interviews with my end users, and majority of the times the interview just goes well. You get your feedback. Most of the times you are expecting some of the feedback, but the difference what really makes is that you will, when the user is slightly hesitant to click a button, even though they are not voicing out these concerns, just because there's a slight hesitation, you know that there's something off. And as a designer, I've learned to pick up on those cues just by understanding user behavior. So, just like birds, users also reveal their needs through patterns and not necessarily through words. Coming to our next one, shared spaces. So, one of my favorite things about bird watching is how so many species share the same habitat. Uh, do you all want to take a guess or count the number of different species you all can see in this image? Just give me a number. Anyway, so the total number of species in this image is actually six. And you can see how each one has its own space, it has its own rhythm, and somehow they are all existing in the same space in harmony. Similarly, when I am designing products, I am digital products here. I am designing digital products for different user personas, is what we call them. You can just say users. So I am designing products here for admins, for employees, for managers. But in the end, it's the same product with different access to all of these users who are interacting. So they are all existing in the same ecosystem with their own goals and boundaries, but we are using the same system differently, or each one is using the same system differently. So here we know that good design, it creates a balance and not a hierarchy. It's also about ensuring that every user gets what they need and without stepping on somebody else's experience. So, birding has taught me that coexistence like this is not accidental. It is actually designed through millions of years of evolution. But in design, it is just accelerated in timelines, also because it's just digital products. Now, the next one, documentation. So, see, without documentation, bird watching is just like a nice day outdoors. But every birder I know eventually ends up on eBird. It's like the Excel sheet of the birding world. You will log every sighting, every species, every location, time, even behavior notes, and keep this documentation. We'll talk about how the documentation, whys of the documentation, but right now we'll talk about how or what happens when the documentation happens. This is an example of Global Bird Day, which happened last year on 9th of October. In the single 24 hours, more than 900,000 participants all over the world participated in bird watching. And through collective effort, there were 2.1 million bird observations logged in a single day. That's the highest ever recorded so far. So now what's happening is this documentation is living forever. It's a living ecosystem, and everyone is adding value to it overall. Similarly, talking about personal documentation, these are my personal statistics from India. I've been bird watching for much longer than I have been designing as a professional. So my stats run through the time I started bird watching. So far, I've observed so many species in India and I've gone bird watching so many times through the years. Just personal stats. But in both the cases, what we are doing is we are creating a record. So when it comes to design, you'll think that you will remember these decisions, or why did we change the color of blue from dark blue or from this hex code to that hex code. But you will not remember these decisions later on. So, which is why documentation is super important. It's a lot about keeping notes, keeping screenshots, keeping your decision logs. It helps to see us trends over time. It helps us to track user behavior. It helps us to connect insights from different research movements. Now, in both of these analogies, which is bird watching and design, we are not just creating a single record, we are adding to a living system of knowledge. The more you add to it, the more valuable it becomes for you, for your team, and in this case, for birds as well. I'll talk about how. In pattern recognition, so now, over time, we have built this incredible data set that not only helps us remember what you saw, where you saw, it also helps others spot patterns that we would miss if it were individual records only. Patterns like migration timings, habitat changes, population shifts. So, after a while, bird watching becomes less about these single sightings and more about these patterns. I'll give you an example. Look at this migration pattern. Again, all of this has been possible because there has been tons and tons of data generated through years. This in particular is 2019 March to June animation done by eBird. Each single dot here represents tens of thousands of birds, and you can see how the spring migration is happening from South Americas to the North Americas. And this has been only possible because of collective efforts from bird watchers in the entire both of these continents, looking at birds and logging those sightings, which is available for public scrutiny and available for public pattern recognition. So now what happens in design is, similarly, we have design patterns. It could be saying, because we have been using buttons as an example, the same button is used throughout the entire software. It's not happening like the button on this screen is blue, but the button on the next screen is red. So because we have been using over and over, using the same components over and over, it builds a design system. Design system in design is what keeps things consistent and familiar. It's how we maintain coherence across different products while still allowing for changes and evolution in our digital products. So now pattern recognition helps us see that this is just not disruption. but it's part of a natural cycle. Curiosity. It's Curiosity is one of my core beings of one of my personality traits that I use very often. So far we have seen how long bird watchers would go to see a particular bird, but there's also how far you are willing to go to see some particular species. So now that's what we did. So there are some species which never come to land. So in order to see those species, what do? You go where they are. So this is the west coast of India. You can see Mangalore here. We took a boat out from Mangalore port, drove or drove 100 kilometers into the Arabian Sea, camped there overnight on a boat, and came back the next day. So we had 2 full days of bird watching on the boat. But it was mostly a rocking boat, staring at open sea, seeing absolutely nothing for most of the day. But then suddenly something will show up, and this something are the species that you do not see on the land. And the excitement of it all makes it worth it. In comparison, for this particular trip, we got about like 15 species and less than 200 individuals. And out of these 15 species, there are only about 5 or 7 species that never ever come to the land. So you have to go there where they are. And how it comes to, this is pictures from our boat, lovely sunrise and sunset views there. How it connects to design is because of bird watching, curiosity has been like one of my core fundamental values in life. I've knowingly or unknowingly also practiced that in design. So when I say in design, I've changed my careers or pivoted my careers in search of this curiosity or to fulfill my curiosity. I've worked from payment sectors to healthcare sector. I have worked for customers and currently I'm working for different enterprises. So this curiosity really drives me even in my professional career. Next, heartbreaks. Yes. So, not every birding story ends well. Sometimes you will spend days chasing some particular species and then you will just miss it, even if it is just missing it by the seconds. You will go home muddy, bitten by mosquitoes, questioning your life choices, and all of that happens very often. One particular example is this one. So you see the island here in the back. Those are called Skomer Islands. They are It's a island west of Wales in the UK. I wanted to see puffins which breed on these islands. The boat trips to this island get sold out extremely quickly before the season even begins. So I had my boat ride booked 5 months in advance. I went from Bangalore all the way to London to Wales to the point of the boat ferry, and on that single day the weather was bad, so the boat rides were cancelled. So yeah, quite sad. I was there with my friend, and both of us were watching puffins on this island through the land, through my scope. I even sketched out a pretty puffin. But yes, not satisfying. And also, yeah, the heartbreak is real when it comes to bird watching. But that wasn't enough. My friend, he lives in the UK. The following season, he went there again. And this time, he actually made it to the island. And this is the picture he sends me from his phone. So, yes, this is the real heartbreak, not the earlier one. Anyway, so yes, heartbreaks are extremely real, and you just become resilient through them. And then when it comes to design, it just happens because sometimes you will work on your products for months and years and they don't even ship. So, bird watching overall has taught me resilience. You can't control every outcome, but you can always show up again. Because more often than not, the bird that you did not see becomes the story you remember the most. Although I would love to see puffins, but anyway, community, the last one. So, bird watching started as a solo hobby for me, but it never stayed that way. Through years, I've had several mentors, several folks that I enjoy birding with. I go out regularly with them, and the joy just multiplies when it is shared. So, bird watching was never just about building a community, it's also about giving back to the community. So here you can see that we, as part of Bangalore Birds, Bangalore Birders, we organize a bird walk in Sunday every single month, and some of our volunteers will lead that bird walk. This is our way of giving back to the community, the same community we have spent so much, like the same community I have personally gained so much from. So this culture of building a community was already had a foundation in me. Now, when it came to design, it just, I already knew the fundamentals of building a community. So, when it came to design, we have been organizing design days as part of Salesforce for 6 years now. It's our way of giving back to the design community. And moreover, in my personal capacity, I have been uh, mentoring some designers, similarly how multiple bird watching folks have mentored me through the years. So it just reminds me that creativity does not grow in isolation, but it thrives in ecosystems like this. So I would like to know how your passions help you in your daily life, in your professional life. And yeah, open to question answers now.
That was such an interesting presentation. I mean, there's so much to learn and the parallels that you kind of drew with your own profession. I mean, it's so cool. One thing that I do want to ask more about is I think India's bird watching community. What would you have to say about it? What would you want people to know about it? Is it a large community? Is it a small community? Do you guys communicate often? What are the kind of tips and tricks that you share?
So, in India, the bird watching community has been growing steadily. It's been, I think, there are about 30,000 active eBird users. eBird is a platform where all of us log our sightings. So, there are
Okay.
about 30,000 active users on eBird from India, but a lot more folks go out and watch birds rather than just logging them digitally or available on this platform. That was one part of
Hmm.
your question. And ways to stay connected. So all of us, like I remember when I had just started bird watching. Like the one of the reasons I started bird watching, or my first proper bird watching trip, was through a newspaper clipping. I saw it in the newspaper that hey, there's a bird walk happening on Sunday. It's free. Come, whoever wants to join. So the mediums have evolved through time. The medium at that point was newspaper clipping for me. There has been Facebook, there's WhatsApp, there's Instagram, there's eBird, there's different tons of social networks through which all of us keep in touch. And access to bird watching has never been an issue because you can just step out, watch birds through your window. But
Hmm.
overall, bird watching does become hyper local, so the hyper local groups also emerge. So, for example, I'm part of a lot of Bangalore bird watching groups just because I live here. And then eventually you share things like, hey, I spotted this particular bird on this date at this location. If that interests you, come. All of us will go bird watching together and find something. So
That's so cool. What do you think we as humans kind of fail to understand about birds when you talk about a species gap?
interesting question. I think with birds, there's still so much unknowns overall. Like, we
Hmm.
still haven't been able to grasp the depth of how migrations work, or migrations only for few species or have been recorded. But we don't know much about why do birds have hyperlocal movements, or exactly some birds will have alarm calls but some other birds don't, or birds have this one particular song which they will sing only to attract mate, but a
Hmm.
different song when they want to defend their territories. So things like these are just fascinating, and overall, like, there might be answers out there, there might be research out there. I may be unaware about it, but like I said, curiosity is what keeps me going in bird watching.
So, what are you the most curious about when it comes to bird watching? Are you looking at the appearance? Are you looking at the sound of the bird? Are you looking to understand the pattern of migration of the bird? What's the number one thing that you're looking at?
I think for me personally, I for me it's the joy of bird watching that I'm looking at.
Okay.
It's like, how do you identify something? But even when I say that, it's not 100% true, because there are so many birds you get one fleeting glimpse of, you can't identify them, and that's okay. It will
Hmm.
drill a hole in my brain for some time, but I will let it go eventually. But
Okay.
there's not a single thing that uh, I think I look for, but from a like a fundamental point of view. But yes, when we are talking about bird identification, there is
Hmm.
a list of things you can look for when you want to identify birds. But for me,
Hmm.
it's just the joy of bird watching.
All right, final question. What is the most surprising or memorable memory that you have when it comes to bird watching? Is there any particular moment that you remember in the past decade plus of bird watching where you've been like, this is going to remain with me for a lifetime?
Lots of them. I think,
Yeah.
okay, I'll give you one of the first ever interactions I had with bird.
Okay.
This is when I was a kid. I was in class 11.
Mm,
I went to Ranthambore Tiger Reserve with my parents, and we were on a canter safari. And at this point, I was not interested in birds, but I was just happy to exist in nature, and that's also how my
mm,
upbringing has been. My parents took me to a lot of national parks and tiger reserves growing up. So when we were out in the safari at Ranthambore, the guide who was with us in the canter, I was a kid back then, so he just comes up to me, gives me a toffee, and I'm like, okay, toffee, great. I was happy. And then he's like, just open it and keep it in your hand. And I'm like, okay, I did that. And he's like, put your hand up. So there was a toffee in my hand, and I just put it up, and there's a rufous tree
mm.
that swoops in, takes the toffee out of my hand, and flies away.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That to a kid is phenomenal. That was just such an unexplainable interaction for me. And at that point, I did not know it was a rufous tree pie. At that point, it was a big bird that flew in and took toffee out of
Mm.
my hand. But years later, after I got into bird watching properly, I looked up, what's that bird which is big, orange in color, has a tail, and found out it was a rufous tree pie. So yeah.
That's so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that memory, and thank you so much for that presentation. Again, just hearing about the parallels that you drew with your own profession, completely fascinating when it comes to resilience, when it comes to shared spaces, communication, community in general. I think there were a lot of very interesting takeaways, especially when you talk about attention to detail. And I think one thing that kind of really stuck with me was one of the photos that you shared at the beginning, where I think you saw about eight different birds which were blue, but they're all different species. But if you just look at it, give it a glance, they don't look different. But the closer you look, you can see the minor differences. And then later on, you also showed a different photo where there were about six different species. When I was looking at that, I saw about five. So, but then later on, I just went back again and I was like, okay, let me just try to see the different ones. But thank you so much for joining us and speaking with us about this. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me, Aisha.
Absolutely.